Hello again, everyone. As we know, for this week, you will be submitting the initial research source form for your first paper. And that means you have to know how to conduct initial research. So I am here today to show you how to conduct initial research and how to fill out the source form. First, of course, you will want to access the initial research source form and open it in Microsoft Word. And you will just put your name up here and the course and whatever topic you choose for your paper. And I don't really care if you put the due date on there or not. Whatever you'd like to put up there is fine. One thing I want to emphasize to you is that this form really is mainly for you to take notes on sources so that you can locate them, and you'll have a list of sources that you can keep throughout working on your paper. I only want you to turn in a copy to me by the end of the week so that I know that you have done some work on looking up the sources that you need. Okay, now, even in classes where you aren't required to turn in an initial research source form, and that will be most of the classes you will take because I made this form up and probably nobody else is going to look at it. It's always good to conduct initial research before you even decide on a topic. And this is a step that a lot of students, even graduate students, don't take. And it's too bad because really, as you'll see as we do this, you can find a lot of information in, about 10 minutes time sitting at home in your pajamas with a hangover. So it's such a simple step, and yet it can save people so much stress that it's really a good idea to always do this. Because the first thing that you want to know before you even pick a topic is, will I be able to find enough sources to write a paper that meets the requirements for the class? Because if you go to a professor and say, I can't find sources for this paper unless the professor has given you a topic to write on, chances are the professor will say, then change topics. So this is how you can easily avoid that. First of all, in Canvas, you can access the Csn Library very easily. It's actually in the gray bar to the left of the screen. And you just click on Csn Library, and then you have to click this so that it will open in a new tab. This is the Csn Library homepage. And from here, you can access all kinds of things. Video collections, it's a great place. It has a lot of both full-length movies that are of educational value, full-length documentaries, clips from documentaries, and documentaries are becoming increasingly useful as sources. We'll talk about that a little bit more within the next couple of weeks as to how to use them. Catalog is where you go to get the names of books as well as videos and some other materials that are held in the library, and we're going to be looking at that in a few moments too. Article databases. On the assignment sheet, it says that you can't use articles that aren't accessed through the library databases. And this is what it means by library databases. It includes both ProQuest OneSearch, which is what this box is, and the databases that you can access through article databases. And let's just take a quick look at this. They're listed alphabetically if you happen to know the title of the journal you're looking for. But first, let's look at a couple of the major ones. And I'm going to be working, while we're working on paper one, I'm going to pretend that I'm writing a paper on whether or not antidepressants should be prescribed to people 18 and under. Okay, so let's start by typing our topic into ProQuest. Obviously, I've typed this search in before, which is why it's coming up there. Now, there are a couple of things that we can look at here. First of all, in this one database, there are 88,932 results. Admittedly, all of them wouldn't be useful for my paper, but I only need 5 sources. So what that tells me is that chances are very good that I have chosen a topic that I'm going to be able to find enough source material on to write a paper about it. So if I wanted to, I could end my initial research right there. And that took, 2-3 minutes? And it's better than waiting till the end of the semester and discovering that you've picked a topic that there isn't any material available on. But let's not stop there. Let's go ahead and look and see what is available. Okay. Antidepressants, and this is a book. Let's check on it and see what we can find out. Now, first of all, there are several copies of it available at both the West Charleston and the Cheyenne libraries at CSN. And one of them is on reserve in Cheyenne, so even if somebody checks all of these other copies out, you can go to Cheyenne and look for it there. And they'll have a copy so that you can run copies of selected chapters if you want to. Something else important to notice is the call number, which in this case is RM 332 A5733 2006. That tells us where to find the book in the library. Now, there's something important to look at in terms of contents. This will give you chapter titles, if there are chapter titles. But there's something else to notice, and this is very important. If you look at this, you'll notice that the chapters have people's names after them, like antidepressants are an effective treatment for depression / Betty Smart Carter. Then there's there are a couple of dashes that shows that we're moving on to another chapter, which is titled Antidepressants Are Not the Most Effective Treatment for Depression. And the names after that are Barry Duncan, Scott Miller, and Jacqueline Sparks. Now, what these names tell you is that this book is something that's called an anthology. Whenever you have an anthology and you have chapters that are written by different people, each chapter in that anthology counts as a separate source for your paper. Hear that again. Whenever you have an anthology, which is a book that has different authors for different chapters, like here we have Betty Smart Carter and Barry Duncan, Scott Miller, and so forth for these 2 different chapters. Whenever you have an anthology, every chapter counts as a separate source. Let's look at these chapter titles. First of all, we have one chapter that says that antidepressants are effective, and one chapter that says that antidepressants are not the most effective for anyone. Now, there could be good information in that for my paper on antidepressants for children. Okay. And down here, we see a chapter called Antidepressants Benefit Children by Sherry Walton and David Fazler, and then one that says antidepressants have not been proven to benefit children. Now what that tells me is that I have one chapter here that I can use as a source for people who support the use of antidepressants in children. And I have another chapter that would be used as a completely different source that would support the critics who say that antidepressants should not be used for children. Now, considering that I only need 2 sources for the supporters and 2 sources for the critics other than my Issues and Controversies article, and I have a chapter here for the supporters and a chapter here for the critics, and then even after that there's a discussion of the risk of suicide in use, one chapter saying that it does increase it and one chapter that says that it doesn't. It's entirely possible that I could get 2 sources for the supporters and 2 sources for the critics from this one book. It is possible, maybe, that this book could be the only source I really need. Sounds to me like this is a book I'm going to want to look at. So I'm going to go to my source form, and I'm going to type the title, which is Antidepressants, and don't worry about how you format titles for the source form. Like I said, this is mainly notes for you. And I would even, just for yourself, you don't have to do this for the assignment, but for myself, I would note this is an anthology that has at least 2 sources for the supporters and 2 sources for the critics that I'm going to want to look at. The author's name, and in this case, if you're looking at the author, at who's listed as the author for an anthology, as you see, it will say book editor. Okay, so I'm going to just put ED for editor, and then I'm going to put her name. The source type is that it's a book. And for myself, I might even want to put that it's an anthology, so that I'll remind that for myself. Location, I'm not sure which library I'm going to go to, so I'm just going to put Csn Library. And then, again, for myself, so that it'll be easy for me to find this book when I get there, I'm going to go ahead and type in the call number. Okay, so that's one source. And having noted this is 2 sources for the supporter possible and 2 sources for the critics, I mean, since that's really all you need to let me know that you found, technically, if I were a student, technically, I could go ahead and turn this initial research source form in right now. And that took 7 minutes. But since I actually want to go ahead and accomplish a little bit more while I'm sitting here in my pajamas, I'm going to do a little bit more work on this and see what else I can find. Sometimes it's difficult to get back to the library because not all of those windows will give me a link back to the home page, but there's always a way to get back one way or the other. Okay. Now, we have already typed this in, so it will come up in a drop-down menu. And yes, I must have misspelled it at some point. Okay, there's the book that we had. Child antidepressant prescription SOAR. Now that looks like something that we want, but if we read a little farther, it's from the Pharmaceutical Technology in Europe. Now we're interested in what goes on in the world, but for our paper, we're more interested in what goes on in the United States, so that might not be the best one. Then we have an article on antidepressant medications in children from the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, the New England Journal of Medicine is a highly respected source, and it is in the United States, so I think we'll go ahead and take a look at that article. And when we click on it, we see that we actually get the full text of the article. Now, we're just doing initial research. We're not actually looking at our research to study it at this point, but the abstract will give us a good idea of what this article tells us, because that's what an abstract does. It summarizes an article. It says that SSRIs are considered to represent an improvement over older antidepressants because they're better tolerated and are safer in overdose, which is an important feature for drugs that are prescribed to patients who are at risk for suicide. Well, it's not a very good abstract, but it might be okay. And after all, it's not like we have to buy it. So we click on Full Text PDF, because that's what we want. We'll click on Open it in the PDF reader. And the reason that you want PDF is because PDF, which is Adobe Acrobat, and if you don't have it on your computer, you definitely need to install it on your computer. What that will give you is it gives you actual copies of the original pages that the journal was published in. So if there are any kinds of graphics like charts or tables, that will come up. And also you'll have the actual page numbers. 1,490, that's a page number. You're not getting the entire journal. You're not getting 1,490 pages. You're only getting a few pages. But you'll have the page numbers, and you'll find out when we learn how to do MLA citations that you need the page numbers. So since this might be useful for me, I'm going to go ahead and download that and open it in my desktop. And then I'm going to save it wherever I'm collecting articles for my first paper. And I can name it whatever I want. I'm going to name this one with the idea that it's on my topic, and it's from the New England Journal of Medicine, because right now that's all I know about it. But that does tell me that it's a good source. Now, I'm saving all of my sources and information for antidepressants in children, which is my first paper, in a title that in a folder on my desktop that I've titled Use for P1. So I'm going to save this here. And I'm going to go ahead and add this to my initial research source form. And the title is Antidepressant Medications in Children. I'm going to note that that's an article from database. Now, for my own information, I'm going to notice that that's already saved to my computer. And one of the things that I'll need to know when I go to do my MLA Works Cited page is I'll want to know the database name and when I downloaded it. So I'm going to note here that I downloaded from ProQuest OneSearch today, which is January 30th. And of course, you'll know what year it is because you're only going to be working on this for one semester, right? Okay, so there's an article. Base. So you get the idea of where we can find information through ProQuest, but we don't want to stop there. One of the things that we want to do is we want to look at some of the other databases, particularly as you go on in college. More of your professors will want specifically articles in academic journals. And while ProQuest does give you those, you'll get more of them if you use Academic Search Complete. Now, one of the things that we want to do is we want to limit these to full text if we can. Depending on what you're researching, you might not get as many hits if you limit it to full text. But if you limit it to full text, what that means is that for right now, you're only asking for articles that you can access directly on the internet instead of having to go to the library. And we'll put in our topic again. Click search. Again, we find that we have 265 full text articles available here. But we already know that we're going to have plenty of information to write our paper, so we don't have to worry about that as much. Now, we're not really interested about children who are exposed to antidepressants in pregnancy. That's an interesting topic, but it's not the topic of our paper. Antidepressant drugs and the risk of suicide in children and adolescents, on the other hand, does sound like something that we want. Pediatric drugs, there's nothing in here that makes it look like it's something from a foreign country. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Now, it does talk about the fact that that it was published from the Springer International Publishing in Switzerland. So, but it does talk about the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the United Kingdom medicines. So this might be useful. We don't know for sure. But let's look at the abstract. Government agencies have issued warnings about the use of antidepressant medications in children, adolescents, and young adults since 2003. May cause de novo, we'll have to look up what that means at some point, suicidality in some people. This review explores the data on the treatment of depression that led to these warnings. Oh, so this is going to give us information, it looks like, from several different studies that have been done. So that might be somewhat useful. So let's go ahead and download that one. And put its title. Now this guy has a special symbol in his name. That's G. I don't really care if you do this on the initial research source form, but you would need to do it if you're using it in your paper. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do special punctuation on letters and so forth. It depends on which version of Word you're using, but what you want to look for is the command for symbol. On my version of Word, it's under Insert. It's on the Insert menu. Where it is on your version of Word, you'll just have to find it. Go to Symbol Browser. And you'll get something that looks like this. And down here we have alphabetical symbols that have different types of punctuation on them. First we have capitals and then we have lowercase. And we want to look for the O with the 2 dots above it. That's called an umlaut. Okay? And we just click on that. And that's all we have to do, and then we get our special little O there. Now, what I will do when I'm writing the paper, if I use this source, is I will do that one time, and then after that, I'll just copy and paste his name every place I need it so I don't have to waste time going to that symbol. And again, I'm going to put that it's an article from the database and that I saved it to my computer. And I downloaded it from Academic Search Complete on January 30th. And then I'm going to save it. Like this and click on. NPDs and suicide risk article. And I'm going to put it in my folder with things I'm going to use for paper 1. So I've got probably, considering that I have 4 sources here, there are actually 6 sources listed on this initial research source form. Okay, that took, I started at 10:43, it's now 11:06. So it only took about 15 minutes, and I already have 2 sources to go through for my paper, and I have information on where to get 4 more in 15 minutes. Okay? That's not a bad beginning for a research paper, for something that I did in 15 minutes in my pajamas, and could have done with a hangover if it happened to be a Saturday morning, right? Okay, now, I want to show you a couple more things. I'm just going to go back to one of the things that I might need to do is I might need to look for journals that are in a specific field, such as agriculture. For antidepressants, I want to look for psychology, so let's at least start with a P, and we get the names of different databases that we can access through our library. Not journals, databases. And there's a psychology and behavioral science and psych articles. So I might want to look into those 2 at some point to see what they have. because they're both databases with scholarly peer-reviewed journals, which are the best kinds of sources. Okay? So that's how you can look for specialized databases. I know, because I happen to teach English, that it's hard to find articles on literature sometimes. But I know that there are databases for Literature Criticism Online and Literature Resource Center. I know they're here. Depending on what you're writing about, if you're writing about something if you're ever writing about something that has to do with, gambling, or a Nevada law, or something in Las Vegas, going to local Las Vegas news bank will give you full-text articles from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Las Vegas Sun, and the other newspapers in our area. So that's a good site to keep in mind. Beyond that, though, you want to know how to use the catalog. The catalog is where books are listed, and books are really, really, really good sources. We've already looked at that anthology, and you were able to see how that you could get 4 sources for one paper from one book. Another reason that books are very, very good sources is that they've been through an editing process, unlike a lot of web pages which haven't. That's what makes web pages not very good sources and makes Wikipedia completely unacceptable. Something is a good source if the data is reliable and the person who wrote it is respected and reliable and not somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. And you know what it's like. Anybody can start a web page. If I wanted to, I could put on a pair of, khaki-colored shorts and a khaki-colored shirt and a hat, and I could take some beef and pork bones out to the desert in Las Vegas and dig a hole and toss them in there and take some pictures. And I could come home tonight and I could post a website saying that I'm an archaeologist from Harvard and I just discovered the bones of Jesus Christ. I could publish that. Nobody could stop me. It would be an absolute lie. But the only way you'd know it was a lie for sure was if you went to the Harvard archaeology homepage and found out that I wasn't a professor there. But that still doesn't mean that I necessarily am posting a fake page, because maybe I'm a PhD graduate student. It's very hard sometimes to know for sure who's publishing things on the internet and whether the information can be trusted. We all know that anybody can go in and put in anything in Wikipedia. That doesn't mean Wikipedia is a horrible site and should be destroyed. It's perfectly good if you're sitting at home watching TV and somebody mentions a person you've never heard of and you look them up on iPad, on Wikipedia, just to find out who Gaddafi was. But you don't want to cite it in a paper because it's just not trustworthy enough. It's trustworthy enough that as a human being, we can look at it and kind of take it with a grain of salt and go, okay, that kind of gives me an explanation as to who this guy might be. But when you're writing a research paper for an academic audience, you have to know that the information is reliable and is from an expert. And that's why it's best to use the databases or books, because books are going to go through a very rigid editing process through publishers. And especially library books are going to go through another step before particularly a college library is going to adopt it because they'll know that it's probably going to be used for sources in academic papers. And if a college library gets a reputation with the faculty for buying a lot of books from quacks, well, the library is going to get into a lot of trouble from the college or university. So that's one thing that makes it good. The books are reliable. Another factor is that the books are going to be written in a language that you're going to understand. I'm not putting you down, not at all. But I will tell you that a lot of those academic journal articles that you're going to find through the academic journal databases, some of them are perfectly understandable. Some of them aren't. Some of them are written by PhDs for PhDs who pretty much are just trying to show off how smart they are by using the most difficult to understand language they can. Now, I've had 36 hours of coursework. I finished all the coursework I need to get a PhD in English. I've worked with these articles for a long time. And still, I run across articles that it'll take me half an hour to figure out what a paragraph is saying because I have to look up so many words, and I know a lot of them. They're very difficult to read. Not all of them, but some of them. Books, on the other hand, take a lot of the same information, but they express it in a language that's better for undergraduates or people who don't want to spend half an hour reading a paragraph, which, by the way, includes me, to use. Books are just better. And you really only have to go to the library once for any paper you're working on. Just go, collect all the books you want, take something big to carry the books home with you, check them out, and you know that you can renew books through the online library. So books are great. So you click on Catalog, and you will get a notification up here that you're searching the Csn Library catalog. And we type in antidepressants for children, or if it's something we've searched for before, why not just choose it there? Click Search. Now what we're going to get is a list of all the books and movies that are available through the Csn Library, and there are 24 of them. Some of them will have internet access, and there's certainly nothing wrong with using those. Others will be available through the library. Now, one of the things that we want to do, in addition to looking for specific books, is we want to look at these call numbers. Because one of the things that we want to do is we want to look for what is a good area of the library to go to look for books. And what we're finding is that we already know that one of the books we want is in the RN 332 area. Okay? There's RC 516 and RJ 504 and RC 537. RC 536, RC 4. Okay, so it's looking like we want to look in the R's, especially around the RCs, the RMs. Okay. There's another RC. RJ, RC4, RM3. Okay, now, whether you make it on your internet source form, you can go ahead and copy the names of more books and so forth down here if you want to. And then I would make a note for myself to Csn Library The RM 300 section, the RC 400s section, the RJ 500s. Because what you're going to do when you go to the library is you're going to go to these areas. And the first thing you're going to do is skim the titles of books to see what books look like they might have information that you can use. If you find a book that looks like it might have information that might be useful for you, take the book off the shelf and look at the table of contents to see if there's anything in the table of contents that says, yes, this might be a source that I want to use. Another place to look is in the index, in the back of the book. Look under antidepressants, look under adolescents, look under children, look under medications, look under psychotropic medications. Look for places, look under those areas and other key words that have to do with your particular topic. And look to see if any of them indicates that there are a lot of pages on that topic. Because if so, that might be a source you want. And then you can turn to some of those areas and just skim through the pages really quickly. And if you find something that looks like it's going to be good for you, you can either go ahead and check that book out, or if you're collecting too many books, you can go to, I believe the libraries on all three campuses have scanners. I know the library on the Cheyenne campus has a scanner. And I don't think you have to pay to use it. It's one of the few things at CSN they don't ask you to pay for as students. I think you can go and just scan those pages in and save them to a jump disk or email them to yourself if you like, and make sure that you get all the information on the book, the title of the book, the author of the book, who the publisher was, what town it's published. If you have any questions, make sure that you email me from an account other than Canvas, of course, at deborah.oakey@csn.edu. If you have any questions about using Canvas, how to turn things in through Canvas and so forth, just go up to the help desk and go to Search the Canvas Guides, and you'll see a Student Quick Start Guide. I would go ahead and download that to learn how to work with Canvas. And then if you have a lot of problems and you don't think your Canvas is working well, make sure that you contact the help desk. And the help desk for CSN is 702-651-HELP. And they're very, very helpful. As a matter of fact, if they have to call you back, they actually will do so. So by all means, make sure that you know that number, 702-651-HELP, and call them about any problems that you have with technology, because they're wonderful to work with. Thanks a lot for taking a look at this video. I do think that conducting initial research is very valuable for you. And if you take out all the prattling that I stuck in there to teach you some extra information about why websites aren't good, for example, I think you'll find that you actually could do what we did for the initial research in probably half an hour or less, and end up with 2 or 3 good sources or more downloaded, some titles of some books, and information on where to go to the library to look for books. That's a good start on a paper to make it about half an hour sitting at home. And you definitely know that you have picked a topic that there's enough research on so you'll be able to write your paper. And if you do this very early in the semester, in a class where a research paper has been assigned, if you do that, say, in the first full month of school, September or February, you've already got a topic. You've got, depending on how many you find. I mean, we downloaded 2 articles today. You could download sometimes 10 sources to look at, and you know where to go in the library. If you do that in early February or early September, you'll be months ahead of where other people in your class are. And you'll find that the more you do earlier in the semester, and we'll talk about this as we go through this first paper, the better off you'll be, both in terms of the stress that you face at the end of the semester and being able to get materials and help that you need so your paper will actually be much better. So we will be talking about working on term papers, on research papers for classes, and how to schedule them. Okay. The first thing you'll always do is your initial research to pick a topic, and I recommend doing that either in early September or early February. And then we'll talk next week about actually going through sources and how to do that, and we'll talk about when I would recommend that you do that if you have to write a research paper that you find out about on the first day of class and is due at the end of the semester. Okay, well, thanks again for paying attention. If you need any help, make sure you email me. If you have technical problems, call 702-651-HELP. And we will get together again next week to talk about how to work with sources and get information out of sources.